warmer feeling.
And now
It's gonna be hard going
Theodosia.
home.
Cheers.
Can I interest anyone in some champagne? Yo, come on in. Annette. Welcome to our construction site. Beautiful construction. First time I've done it here, so.
It's all right.
So welcome y'all. Welcome to what will be Theodosia in just a few weeks. My name is Vivian Howard, and I thank y'all for taking time out of your Friday night around Easter to be here, and to thank you for doing
Of course.
that.
Yeah, I got you. You keep going.
Yeah, it's a exciting time and exciting project for me, and I'm feeling like there's a lot of cameras on me right now. So I'll start by saying, people always ask me if I grew up coming to the Outer Banks as a kid, and I did not. My parents put a pool in the backyard, largely so that we didn't have to go on vacation. My dad would always say, "Why do you want to go to the beach and deal with all that sand when we have a pool in the backyard?" Really, it was that they were tobacco farmers, and we were not going to be leaving, Eastern North Carolina during the summer. So the first time I ever set foot on the Outer Banks was when I was maybe 7 years old. We went to Currituck during the dead of winter. There was one place open. I remember getting hot cocoa and being so grateful that I wasn't going to starve till we got back to Eastern North Carolina. What I did grow up with was a strong desire to vacation like other people, and a really deep love of stories and history and legends. And so I had this book, The Outer Banks, Legends of the Outer Banks, kind of went around with me wherever I went, and so this whole area has always been kind of shrouded in mystery and lore and storytelling for me, and that's like really where I get my energy and inspiration and reasons for doing things. And so that's why this place is called Theodosia, after Theodosia Burr, who perhaps died in a shipwreck off the coast of here, but perhaps didn't. And so I always think of these far-flung places, places at the end of the earth, literally. And I think of Eastern North Carolina, where I live, a place that's kind of off the beaten path, as having these mysteries and legends and stories surrounding them. And so for that reason, and also for this one, I was so excited to have the opportunity to do this. As a cook, I know y'all don't have to worry about that, but as a cook, you never ever see sunlight. For a long time, people used to ask me why my skin was so great, and I used to say it's because I never go outside, or never even in front of a window. So my skin's not great anymore. That was young person talking. But here, the thing that I get to experience working here is just such a gift, and I, as someone who's spent a lot of time on TV and a lot of time being observed in that way, I feel like I've earned the opportunity to do a certain number of things, and I could open a chain of restaurants, or I could do 1 million licensing agreements in any number of places, but I decided that I want both more and less. I want to do more, but I want to do it in places where I want to legitimately spend time, where I get excited, where my pulse quickens when I get close to the place. And I've always daydreamt about spending more time at the beach. And I've learned as an adult that I can only really enjoy myself if I'm working a little bit. And so this seems like just a great mix of things that make my pulse quicken, and also things that I need to do. I need to work. So, here, let's have some Veuve de Vernet.
Veuve de Vernet.
If you like, no pressure.
Thank you.
Are you good?
I also thought that, the name Theodosia, even if you don't have any idea about the legend of her or the story of her, or the fact that she was really one of the most educated, noteworthy women of her age. She and her husband actually were the first couple to ever, I don't know why this story stuck with me, but they were the first couple ever to take their honeymoon at Niagara Falls and kind of made it like a destination for honeymooners. And one of the reasons we know so much about her is that there were so many letters. She wrote all of these letters, more than 1,000 letters between she and her father. So we really have an intimate portrait of who this woman was. And she was, the socialite of her day. And so I think not only does her story kind of end and begin here on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but there's a lot of stuff to dig into that's fun and a great thing to build the idea of a restaurant off of. In addition to folklore and myth, we're going to be serving some food here. Here, cheers.
Yes.
Cheers. You haven't told me to stop. Cheers.
Cheers.
I don't want any bad luck, so I got to quit all the classes. Seriously, if I miss you, please tell me. Because if not, you're going to get blamed. But I am known in many ways for cooking the food of a specific region. The food of the frugal farmer, Eastern North Carolina. I wrote a 600-page book on it. And so an opportunity like this to come here and kind of dig into another cultural tradition, another type of cooking across the board, really focusing on seafood, both chilled, raw, steamed, seared, all of it, just really focusing in on seafood and on the culinary traditions of this region is really exciting for me and liberating. It gives me permission to focus on something else. So after we have our little sips of champagne, we'll have a little taste of something that is, the inspiration for one of our desserts here. There is this Down East pie. I don't know if y'all know about it. So Down East pie is a lemon pie from this region that is made with a Ritz cracker crust. And then there is other parts of the North Carolina coast kind of latched onto this. And so there's an Atlantic Beach pie that has a saltine crust. It's a lemon pie. It has whipped cream. The Down East pie has meringue. But the idea is that after a great seafood meal, you kind of want to end with something lemony. They also say there's a lemon and a chocolate person in every relationship. I love to say that, and I do believe that's true. But so we'll have a little version of that, very portable. Portable meaning I came from Charleston this morning and made the components there yesterday. But part of digging into what we're going to serve here at Lenore has been, at Theodosia, I just came from Lenore, has been community cookbooks. Island Born and Bred has been one of my most, it's next to my bedside table. And so I've been looking across all of these community cookbooks, looking for things that show up often, not one-offs, but ingredients and preparations that show up often, things like Dodgers or crab puffs. These are things that we're gonna reiterate on the menu here at Theodosia. And I'm so excited to get started. And I can't believe I'm really about to. It doesn't look like something is about to happen here, but it really is.
Next
next week's a big week with
Yes.
all the furniture and fixtures coming in. Thursday before Memorial Day will be opening day, so it's right around the corner.
Yes, I'm so excited. Also, part of having a restaurant in a rural place in Eastern North Carolina has always been top level leadership. And who am I going to come work with me to support me that I can really, work alongside, not above. And this opportunity, given that, it starts out seasonal, I'm sure it won't end up that way, but I've been able to bring really top level talent in here to run the kitchen on the day-to-day. I've hired a woman named Charlotte Coman, and if you're familiar with the North Carolina or even national restaurant scene in a big way, she was Ashley Christensen's #1 for the last 12 years, and I used to go and work events with her. As a chef at this level, you do a lot of events, and you have to cook your food back in your restaurant, and you pack it up, and you take it, and I always hated that. I don't think anyone really enjoys that. But Charlotte really, whether she enjoyed it or not, she was always the most prepared person on any team. Her food was always the most delicious, and I'm just very grateful that this opportunity has allowed me to work with her. We've also hired an amazing GM that I think he starts tomorrow. We have enlisted a man by the name of Zach Thomas to develop a really interesting cocktail program here that hinges on rum, because so much of the history of this place is rum. Don't worry, you'll be able to get your whiskey and your tequila and all of that. But restaurants for me are about storytelling, and I believe that food and drink with a story tastes better. And so that's what we're aiming to do here. And I swear, anything with a sunset like this feels better. So, do y'all have any questions for me?
I'm embarrassed to ask this, but I don't know much of your story other than you're just an amazing chef and everyone talks about you. But how did you get interested in this? How did you go from being a tobacco farmer's daughter to I want to cook for people and I want to give my culture to people? How did that? Is it natural or?
Is anything natural? I grew up, I wanted to be a writer. I went to boarding school when I was 14. I then went to NC State. I moved to New York to be a journalist. And like so many people who want to go into the arts or anything like that, I ended up waiting tables. I waited tables all through college as well. And I ended up in this restaurant where it was called Voyage, and this was in 2001. And the concept of the restaurant was Southern food via Africa. And that's something we talk about a lot today, but not back then at all. And the chef is named Scott Barton. He's an excellent storyteller, and I really just fell in love with the stories that the restaurant was opening. So we had this whole education, much like we'll have in a couple weeks here, around the history behind the dishes and why they are what they are, as well as the ingredients. And so he really inspired me. And this was kind of in the day that Anthony Bourdain was first coming on board. I was I was a server during the day at this restaurant, and then I worked for free in the kitchen. I was a server at night, and I worked for free during the day. And I was also a hostess. We got reviewed by the New York Times during this period of time, and they called me out because they walked in and they're like, the host was reading a cook's tour by Anthony Bourdain. I was like, oh, it was not a good review, by the way. And a lot of it hinged on that, walking in and the host was reading a book. So, well, anyway, I started cooking for that reason. And what I found was that I really loved the camaraderie of the kitchen and working toward a common goal together and both succeeding and failing as a group. And so I just kept cooking, and I met my former husband. at that restaurant, and we started a little business, a little soup business out of our apartment in New York, and then that translated into my family offering to help me open a restaurant anywhere in North Carolina that I wanted. Inside of this 10,000 square foot building they had purchased for $75,000 in downtown Kinston. So that's
anywhere.
Yes. But you know, I still always really had this dream of storytelling, and inside of me, and that's like really, I think, what made me successful as a chef. I don't think I'm the best chef in the world, which is why I'm so grateful to work with somebody like Charlotte, who really loves the process and the organization, and I mean, I can do that and I've become very good at it, but it's not like what makes my pulse quicken, you know. And so that's why you know me, is because I continue to pursue that storytelling bit, and sought out to make a documentary about the dying food traditions of Eastern North Carolina with a childhood friend. And I never planned to be in that. I thought it was gonna be like a producer or whatever. And she was like, "You're way more interesting than this." And so it became a combination of those things. And that was a chef's life, and that allowed me to write a cookbook and do all these things.
Tell us more about Charlotte.
About Charlotte Coleman?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, she's 40. I don't know why I just said that.
She wants to lie.
What do you mean? I mean,
She's very
Is she the chef, or did
yes.
you
So
have
she will be running the kitchen on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
I will. I'm going to move down here May 12th, and I will be here for 3 weeks. My kids will be back and forth. Then I'll go home for a week or two, and then I'll come back. But she will be the consistency and quality coordinator, manager, and you know, chef of this restaurant on a daily basis.
Is she using her recipes or yours or both?
Mine, but you know, this is a conundrum when you do a project like this, because it very much has to be my vision and my menu, but if I want to hire the best person that I can, the only person that I'm going to hire is someone who wants to have some creative input. And I want that too, and I want to collaborate, and I want to work with her, and you know, I want us to become better chefs as a result of working together. And so that is, you know, that's my goal for here. And so I'm not going to make Charlotte come out in the dining room and talk to people, but probably.
How do you spell her last name?
Coman.
Thank you.
And she'll be here tomorrow. I don't know why I said that, but don't come looking for her. But yeah, tomorrow we're gonna go in the kitchen and make a list of all the small wares and the things, all the practical things that you need to make a kitchen, and I'm going to support her in setting it up for the way that she wants it to work.
I like that.
Yeah, to a certain degree, probably.
great.
Yeah, but I mean, yes.
I know you mentioned that so much of your food is about storytelling for a place, and you mentioned like Eastern North Carolina, and you have Lenore, Charleston, and you're speaking about the Down East recipes. So what's your vision for this part of the Outer Banks, which is so much farther north than a place like Down East, but still has that same coastal influence?
Well, so, my vision for this place is really to serve like in-season species that are local, that are sourced locally, which, is no small feat, even in a place where you're surrounded by water like this. To be honest, like duck itself has very few like cultural culinary traditions. It was only incorporated about 60 years ago, if I'm like correct. there's a camera on me.
It's 30, but you're fine.
But,
Or 20.
but you know, I think that the traditions that I am speaking to, cooking from this place, are cooking from a place where there are not a lot of resources. The resources are from the sea. You know, there are one of the recipes that I've like studied a lot and that will be represented here are Dodgers, cornmeal Dodgers, and they do show up all along the Outer Banks, and they show up all along their Outer Banks of the barrier islands, all along the East Coast, really, in some form, because there's a lack of resources. So it's like cornmeal or flour with water or clam broth to season them. So, you know, a very like kind of rustic dumpling. Spices are not very prevalent, neither are a lot of fresh herbs, but we're going to incorporate those. You know, I like to take these like rustic traditions and apply, you know, like a chef's sensibilities to them, or a modern sensibility. So that's, you know, that's my plan. Also, light rolls. I don't, you know, light rolls when you get down to duck are not a thing, but in many parts of, you know, these Outer Banks, it's, you know, really kind of like just a yeast roll, but it's kind of the biscuit, the sandwich roll, the, you know, all-purpose bread of the Outer Banks in many ways, and so they will feature prominently here. We're also going to have very high-end kind of offerings, like we're going to serve Marshallberg caviar with some Jimmy Red cornmeal Johnny cakes, you know, so kind of like bridging a traditional caviar service with this part of North Carolina.
You also have like the mainland, so you just have Currituck right across there, so right, so you have corn and you have like the seasonal, like, so you can incorporate some of, I'm assuming some of, I don't know, I'm just assuming, like you have like the mainland right over there, so that you do have, that's a big farming community.
And the waterfowl heritage as well, with a duck.
Yeah, so we're going to have so you have that. You also have my, what I bring in, you know, in terms of like, my whole history has been focusing on vegetables and fruits and grains. So yeah, incorporating like the fowl. We're going to have a blueberry barbecued duck, because duck is such an important thing here. I actually went to I just bought a very expensive decoy because I got caught up in an auction. Like, you won! I was like, no, I lost! Yeah, so we're gonna have our poultry is gonna be duck, and you know, I make this blueberry barbecue sauce. You're all gonna go home with a jar of it. And absolutely, you know, one of the things I'm most excited about is, you know, we open May 22nd, and I get to plan a menu from May 22nd to essentially like September 15th that is very seasonal in nature, that can like transition as the summer transitions, you know, and you know, this is the best season to cook as a chef, you know, and so it feels like a gift, and you know, I'll continue to cook here, you know, as the seasons go on, but this just feels like what a dream, you know, in this place and this time of year.
Do y'all grow anything? Will you have any growing here? Like any herbs?
Absolutely
anything?
not. No.
Any herbs?
No, maybe next year. What you need to advocate for is a patio right out here next year.
Okay, we heard that.
Yes.
No taste.
I'm curious about your clam chowder, if you're going to have it, and there's a real big tug of war about clam chowder. There's what I grew up with was New England and Manhattan style, but I'm madly in love with Hatteras style, which is clear. Will you have clam chowder?
So I do have a clam chowder on the menu, and you know, kind of what I'm known for is like doing something that speaks to a tradition or a memory, but doing it just a little bit enough off of center so that you don't compare it to your own. So it will not be clear, and it will not be, it will be familiar.
Familiar, I like
Yes,
that.
but different.
Yeah. That's good. You should have that as your
Yeah,
saying.
it's really more like paying respect to the thing, and not just in name, but having a few touchstones within the dish that, you know, really speak to the original, but it's not going to be close enough that you're going to be like, my grandma's was better.
No, it's good that you're bringing yourself into it 100%. I mean, but you're respecting history, and that's a mix. It's
Yeah, I think that's what
lovely.
makes it interesting
Yeah,
for everybody.
yeah.
Were there any challenges mentally going into this to come to the Outer Banks, because it can be a little insular compared to Atlantic Beach and the Treasure Coast and things like that, and things that North Carolinians are more inclined to go to? They're not inclined to come to us. Is that a challenge, do you feel like? And a challenge in terms of appeasing to a palate that may be different, meaning from the north, rather than what you've been
From the
traditionally
north?
around? Yeah.
Talking Virginia?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Virginia's north, but it seems like the Outer Banks does have a different flavor with its visitors, as opposed to what we normally, people from North Carolina don't come here. I mean, is that a challenge to you, or something that you want to meet a challenge to that with people that are from North Carolina, are familiar with what you do?
You know, I have my original restaurant, Chef and the Farmer, is in Kinston, North Carolina, and you know, you can track reservations over the years and also engagement with guests. And I would say that our number one market, aside from Raleigh, over like a 10-year span, was the Norfolk region.
Really?
Yes, and you know, I had my TV show was, I think it's WHRO.
Yep.
Yes, and you know, you also so they did a great job with the show, and you know, one of our other top markets was like the Twin Cities, and so we could always tell like what stations really like aired the show in a good time, and it was also a 3-hour drive, and so I feel like I'm gonna do well here, and I also, the point is, I'm hoping to offer a dining experience that like, it doesn't matter if you know who I am or not. Just like it doesn't matter if you know who Theodosia is or not. It's a pretty word to say. This is going to be a great restaurant that showcases the region and its history and its like ingredients. So that's my goal. Is I don't want people to come here. I want, you know, obviously if you're drawn to me, come one time because of that, but come back because you had a great experience.
How many can you seat in the restaurant?
About 64.
Yep.
And we have some seats up there that I think will always be walk-in.
So are you already taking reservations, or are you already booked? Like, I want May 22nd.
I'm
Just putting it out there.
You are taking
I don't know if it
reservations.
has hours, but we would like
Yes, we are taking reservations.
Okay.
So.
But I am not. Do not text your call.
No, that goes.
It will not go anywhere.
I like the storytelling and through food. I will tell you, I grew up in Ohio and I went to Campbell University.
Oh.
And I went and started with my husband, who grew up in Currituck, born and bred. But one of my good friends who pharmacy school grew up in Kinston, and her dad was a tobacco farmer. And she would tell me, again, clueless, Emily. She would tell me about how her grandma would make like the food for their workers, right? Like in the morning they would have breakfast in the pails, and then if the biscuits were left over, they had chocolate biscuits the next day.
Yes.
And she would tell me these stories, like, you know, it's just like talking about like, hey, I talked to my mama today, and this is, you this is what we did, and then taking the meal for lunch and dinner when it was the time of year that they were, pulling in the crops and stuff. And I was always fascinated by it, but it was so important for her family they owned the farm, but it was important to feed the people that worked for them. And it was honestly, I'm not being funny, I'm not being, not just saying this, but it struck me at a very young age when I was in my early 20s, that this was how her family connected to the people that worked for them. And that this food, and I even to this day joke her, I'm like, are chocolate biscuits on, because I never heard of a chocolate biscuit. It's an old stale biscuit. I mean, I don't know if but this is what her family did, but they took an old biscuit and the next day it was dipped in chocolate, and her mom, it was a treat for the...
Yeah, biscuits with chocolate gravy is what a lot of people would call it, and yeah.
Yeah, so to me, I learned so much being a kid from middle Ohio, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. And she would talk about, like, they would do the fried chicken, and I'm not trying to be funny, but it was just amazing to me. And I was like, you feed? And she's like, yeah, they're our family. And the stories that she would tell about it, to me, I don't know. So when you were talking about the stories and all, it hit me, like, this is my friend too, that I've, through the years, and her family still has their farm and they still do that. But I always kind of joke her, I'm like, chocolate biscuits on the menu today, but anyway, I think I don't know, I'm just telling you this, but I think it's really cool.
I respond to that 100%.
It touches, when you feed people, it touches something in this world today of what it is. When you feed people, you're not only feeding them for their stomach, you're feeding them for their soul. And there's something kind in that. And when you're telling them a history, I don't know, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm one of those people who feels like nostalgia can be dangerous, but it's also important to pay attention to what happened before. There's some really good things about it, And I also think that we all want to know more about who we are, right? And so that was very empowering for me, learning about more of who I was through like the way that I grew up eating, and also people of Eastern North Carolina, like me on PBS and in my books, like highlighting those foodways really gave them a sense of pride in their place. And so, I'm not pretending I'm going to do that in Duck, North Carolina, but I don't know, there's something there,
But you are probably giving people, whether they be from Northern Virginia or DC or wherever they're from, you're actually giving them experience that they will be able to talk about over and over again, and they hope to recreate and bring friends and family too. Like, I think people, I don't know, food is something that binds people, and so I think you're giving them an experience and giving them a taste of Duck, North Carolina, or the Outer Banks, but that they'll take and they'll talk about, and maybe they'll bring other people back. I don't know, I think it's amazing, and I love Theodora. I love it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yes.
So you have a portrait of Theodosia?
So,
the portrait?
in the hallway that leads to the bathroom, there's going to be a lot of photographs that are of notable women, past and present, from the Outer Banks, and she will be in there. But I'm trying not to like have it be like hokey Theodosia. It's like the spirit of Theodosia, because she was like the classiest gal around.
Yeah.
And so it's more like you're gonna get her vibe, but she's not gonna hit you over the head.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a very neat mark, as they call it, like a design element that is, like what do you call it? The profile of a woman, and it could be me, it could be Theodosia, it could be, anyone.
I like that.
Almost.
Yeah.
Who has a bun?
Well,
How many cookbooks do you have in your collection?
What do you mean in my personal
Like in your
collection?
personal collection, you have hundreds of them?
That's not a fair question because people send me a lot of cookbooks. A lot. But like 10 that I use.
Ms. Howard, I know it's early yet, but have you developed, are you in a position to share the piece de resistance, the menu item of Theodosia, like the end all of end all?
The signature.
I'm not. No, we're not gonna.
Nice job, Aaron. Good try. Good try, Aaron.
First of all, I don't like signature dishes. Yeah, I don't like that kind of idea. And I think that, I'm not going to put that much gravity in any one thing. I just spoke about wanting to collaborate with Charlotte, and that really puts a lot of pressure on her. I will say there's something that, will be here, and I think that everybody that comes will want to have it. So, not just in, duck, but like the coast of North Carolina, like if you go to the beach, you have to have a shrimp burger. And, that's typically like, small shrimp that are breaded separately and, on a hamburger bun or some kind of seeded bun, maybe with tartar sauce and cocktail sauce. And that's one of the pleasures of, going to the beach for me at least. But I always the shrimp fall out, and I'm always like, this is too much breader for it. So we're gonna have like little mini shrimp burger sliders that shrimp that's chopped and then like bound with a kind of a scallop mousse and then breaded, and in our own little light roll, which is the quintessential bread of the region. So. The other thing, you always want to eat something like that, but if you get that, it's your whole meal, a whole burger. So these are going to be very small, so it can just be part of what you eat.
Sounds like boiled drum might be on the menu at some point. Is that something?
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking forward to working with a lot of different things. Like ribbon fish is something that I worked with last summer that I'm excited. We're gonna have a schnitzel that will always kind of, or I'm calling it chicken fried fish.
That's good.
So that will, serve whatever species is coming around that is firm. At times it'll be amberjack, swordfish in that case. We're gonna have a slow baked grouper that's gonna be served with some of these cornmeal dodgers, but very light dodgers, Dodgettes.
Well, I think we have hats. I think we want to do a quick photo before the
Okay.
sun
Oh, yeah.
sets. I'm going to flip on some lights because I think we'll